He ended war by taking freedom away. He brought peace by quietly concentrating power, and the world thanked him for it. In this video, you'll understand how real power works when it doesn't look violent, how control can feel like safety, and why people accept systems that slowly remove their freedom, even when those systems claim to protect them. But near the end, you'll see the single move that made this system impossible to reverse, a decision so subtle that most people miss it, yet everything that follows depends on it.
Picture this, the Roman Republic is dying. I mean, for 100 years, it's just been tearing itself apart with one civil war after another. And then, the person who finally ends the chaos and forges an entire empire isn't some hardened general. He's a sickly teenager. This is the incredible story of Augustus. I mean, really, think about that for a second. How did one young man with basically no political or military experience to his name managed to outmaneuver the most powerful men in Rome and build an empire that would last for centuries? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. Okay, so first we've got to set the stage. By the middle of the 1st century BC, Rome was, to put it mildly, an absolute mess. The old republic just couldn't handle the huge territories it now controlled. The system was breaking down. See, for decades, the real power wasn't in the hands of the Senate anymore. Oh no. It was in the hands of these ambitious, larger-than-life generals with armies that were loyal to them, not to Rome. Guys like Marius, Sulla, Pompey, and of course, Julius Caesar. They were all fighting for the top spot, and they were ripping the Republic to shreds in the process. And this whole powder keg finally explodes on the Ides of March, 44 BC. A bunch of senators, terrified that Caesar was about to make himself a king, stab him to death right on the floor of the Senate. They thought they were heroes saving the Republic. But what they actually did was create a massive power vacuum and unleash total bloody chaos. So, who's gonna step up and fill this vacuum? Everyone, and I mean everyone, assumed it would be Caesar's loyal right-hand man, Mark Antony. But Caesar's will? It held a surprise that absolutely nobody saw coming. The person who inherited everything wasn't a seasoned general or some powerful politician. He was just a teenager, 18 years old. That's it. So when that will was finally read aloud, you could have heard a pin drop. Rome was stunned. Caesar had posthumously adopted his great-nephew, a young man named Gaius Octavius, and made him his #1 heir. And the kid immediately did something brilliant. He took the name Gaius Julius Caesar, instantly broadcasting to everyone, especially Caesar's soldiers, that he was the new Caesar in town. And this set up what looked like a complete mismatch. In one corner, you've got Mark Antony. He's Caesar's most trusted general, a seasoned politician, a guy who commanded armies and totally expected to take over. And in the other corner, you have this kid, the one we now call Octavian. He's only 18, said to be in poor health, and has zero experience. On paper, it's not even a contest. But here's the thing. Antony and pretty much all of Rome had completely underestimated this kid. Octavian turned out to be a political genius, combining that famous family name with his own incredible cunning, ambition, and just utter ruthlessness. I mean, his rise to power was just lightning fast. Let's just walk through how quickly this all happened. Less than a year after Caesar's death, Octavian has already raised his own army. By 43 BC, he forms a powerful alliance, the Second Triumvirate, with his main rivals, Antony and another general named Lepidus. Their stated goal? Hunt down Caesar's killers, which they do at the Battle of Philippi. But over the next decade, he just methodically picks off his rivals, one by one. First Sextus Pompey, then he shoves Lepidus aside. Until finally, in 31 BC, it all comes down to a final showdown with Antony and his ally, Queen Cleopatra. The massive naval battle at Actium settles it. In just 13 years, he went from a nobody teenager to the absolute ruler of the entire Roman world. But let's be crystal clear here. This victory was built on a foundation of absolute horror. The triumvirate used a terrifying tool called prescriptions. Now, this wasn't just political maneuvering. This was state-sanctioned murder on an industrial scale. They literally posted lists of names in public, making it legal to hunt down and kill hundreds of senators and thousands of other wealthy citizens. It was a brutal way to get rid of your enemies and, just as important,
to steal their money to pay your armies. And Octavian, the young heir, was right at the center of this bloody purge.
So after that big victory at Actium, it's all over for Antony and Cleopatra. They flee back to Egypt where they both take their own lives. And just like that, at only 33 years old, Octavian is the one and only undisputed ruler of Rome. The civil wars are finally over. But now, he's got the exact same problem that got his great-uncle killed. How do you rule like a king without anyone calling you a king? And this, right here, is where you see his true genius. Instead of just declaring himself dictator for life like Caesar did, he launched this masterful rebranding campaign for himself and for the entire Roman state. He came up with this brand new system that we now call the Principate. And honestly, it was a masterpiece of political theater. On paper, he claimed he restored the Republic. So, the Senate still met, elections were still held, but in reality, he held all the real power. By calling himself the Princeps, or first citizen, he got to sidestep those hated words, king or dictator, while keeping total control over the army and all the important provinces. It was genius. And then in 27 BC, the Senate kind of made it all official. They gave him a new name, a name that was just dripping with religious authority and respect, Augustus, which means the revered one. Gaius Octavius, the ruthless warlord, was gone. In his place stood Augustus, the father of his country, the founder of a new golden age. He had this famous saying about his own legacy that sums it all up. I found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble. And believe me, that was no exaggeration. His 40-year reign kicked off an era of peace and prosperity so incredible they had to give it a special name, the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. He didn't just conquer, he built. He created a permanent professional army to guard the frontiers, plus the famous Praetorian Guard to protect the emperor. He totally reformed the tax system. He launched this massive building program, giving Rome the roads, aqueducts, and temples that became symbols of its power. He even created Rome's very first official police and fire departments. And all this stability allowed for a golden age of culture to flourish, with writers like Virgil and Horace creating masterpieces under his patronage. But, of course, it's never that simple, is it? This amazing piece he created, well, it came at a steep price. And that forces us to ask a really tough question about the man himself. So how do we remember Augustus? Do we see him as the tyrant who destroyed the Roman Republic, who murdered his enemies, who twisted every democratic institution to make himself an absolute ruler? Or do we see him as the savior who ended 100 years of bloody civil war, who brought on 2 centuries of peace, and who turned out to be a brilliant administrator who sponsored a cultural golden age? The wild thing is, he was both. And that leaves us with the big question, the one historians are still wrestling with today. There's no doubt the Pax Romana brought incredible stability and prosperity to millions of people for hundreds of years, but it was built on the ashes of the Republic. It was built on autocracy. So was it worth the price? That's a question we're thinking about.
If this story gave you clarity, show your support. Press like and stay with us by subscribing so more great stories can be told.
If you have questions, doubts, or thoughts about this story, leave them below. Your questions shape what stories we tell next.